in Cars is a social experiment that celebrates differences. We chuck two complete strangers in a car and watch them connect through the simple act of conversation.
Oscar has arrived. Okay, here we go. These are the instructions I've been awaiting. I'm picking up Deb Lampshire from the zoo, and I'm taking her to AUT. I have to be very careful not to get any road rage at this stage, because that wouldn't be a good look. Wonder who this Deb person could be. This is new. Although I did want to be a bus driver. This is one of those flash cars that turns off at the red lights. It saves gas. When my old Valiants, I used to actually have to turn it off and turn it on. Now, we've got these cars that can do that by itself. It's amazing. The zoo car park is chocker. Hi, Deb.
Hi. I'll be back.
Hello.
Oh my God, do you know who you are?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, hang on, I'm trying to be cool.
Are you getting in the back?
Do you want me in the back or the front?
Can you help in the front,
Oh, I
please?
certainly can.
Hello.
It's Oscar, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Wow.
Come in.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable? Do you want me to... Here, let me put
Can you
your
put
bag
that?
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. There's
Oh.
these flash...
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
Oh my God. How did they come up with these
Flash
ideas?
new cars have like
Wow.
water things where you put your water. It's hilarious. My first impressions of Deb was her hair. And I'm like, oh, yep. All the people I know with hair that colour are pretty forthright and very interesting characters. That's terrible, eh? I judged her on her hair colour. Okay, here we go. Wow, how exciting.
This is for me.
I'm so glad you, because imagine how embarrassing if you didn't.
I know.
It would have been like, who's this guy?
Well, you know, yeah, well, you're everywhere, Oscar. I mean, and I think why you're so memorable too, you make people laugh.
Oh, wow.
And people love people who make them laugh. It was brilliant, because I knew who he was, and also he's a comedian. And there's nothing like laughter in your life. So it was brilliant to meet someone who's made me laugh and made my children laugh. And I've got bragging rights to my children.
And so I'm dropping you to work.
Yes, you are.
What's your work?
I work at the university, and I'm what's called a professional teaching fellow.
A professional teaching fellow?
Well,
That sounds very
teaching
French.
fellowette. What I do is I work with mental health nurses, so I teach mental health nurses, yeah.
So your background is in mental health?
Yeah, well, sort of. I'm not a nurse myself, but I've had some mental health issues, and I've used mental health services.
Right. And so do you mind if I ask what your issues were?
I hear voices other people don't hear.
Wow.
Yeah.
You say that in the present tense?
In the present, because I still do. Yeah, yeah. So, but really, Oscar, I mean, what started it, to be honest, was I was highly, highly anxious.
Yeah.
So really fearful. Mental health issues start from that foundation, fear and sadness. So that if the issues aren't dealt with, or if it continues, then what develops is what is identified as serious mental illness. So when I'm hearing voices, it's usually because I've got so incredibly anxious that I actually can't cope, and I don't know what to do with myself, and I can't think straight.
So it's a barometer of how anxious you are.
Yeah. And so what I've kind of learnt to do is I trust them in terms of they let me know when things are getting a little bit out of hand.
Yes.
But I don't necessarily trust what they say to me.
Right. Which is just like how we should feel about every thought that passes through our head, right?
We should, yeah.
I mean, we shouldn't believe every thought that we have.
Nor what we're told. And that's the thing. But I mean, you tie yourself, you think if you had to evaluate every single thought you had, you wouldn't get any time for anything.
I would never leave my room.
And that's exactly what we do. We don't leave. We isolate ourselves because there's so much information to process.
Wow. People who hear voices, I always thought it was their own voice you heard.
No. Wow. Because if it... If it was your, and some people may well do, but generally it's other people's voices.
And so how old were you when...
I was about 5 when I first became aware of hearing a voice when there was no one in the room. I'm an adopted child, and I thought it was my birth mother trying to contact me.
Wow.
That makes sense. You know, it kind of makes sense,
Well, of course, you're 5.
Thank you.
How long did you struggle? Well, did you cope with that before you had some help?
I never had any problems with the voices as such. I was brought up in a very multicultural area, so voice hearing wasn't such a big deal.
Right.
You know, it's just kind of, well, they're the voices of your ancestors and they're looking out for you. So that's great. So it fitted in with my worldview.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What you generally always feel, you kind of feel you're always on the outside.
I understand that completely, and it's exactly the same with comedy. It's not like you kind of grow up thinking, I've got a funny bone, I need to express that. It's like for me, suddenly, I think I was 6 when I...
See, isn't that interesting?
I accidentally made the class laugh without even trying. I wasn't trying to even be funny. I was trying to obey the teacher, but because I couldn't speak English, my response was wrong.
Okay.
In that moment, you see them smiling,
How seductive
and you go, oh,
is
someone's
that?
smiling at you, instead of being angry at you.
Yes.
And so, it's a buffer between you and the world, and it's a way of coping with the world.
Absolutely.
Is this exactly the same?
Exactly the same.
Wow, I've never thought of it in that regard.
It's just,
So you hear about young people being encouraged to be more vulnerable.
Absolutely.
You hear about All Blacks being encouraged to be more vulnerable.
Yeah, but is it being vulnerable or is it being accessible?
Oh, what's the difference?
Well, if you make yourself vulnerable, then you make yourself accessible, don't you? To a variety of things, both good and bad.
Which is why we're too scared to make ourselves vulnerable.
Because showing fear is a huge intimacy. That's an incredibly powerful thing to do in front of such trust.
That's why so many
You
actors
haven't,
I'd say are mental. So how did you get well?
I spent a lot of time in hospitals and institutions, but to be honest, things didn't really improve for me when I realised that I was sitting there waiting to be cured of something that was incurable, because it wasn't a disease to be cured. What it was psychological and an emotional distress. What I was responding was to a society and a broader community that had no place for me.
My world is a lot of self-doubt.
You know that.
But
see, I'm not that crazy, am I?
No, you
I'm
don't
not.
sound crazy.
I'm not.
You don't seem like a loony.
No, I don't.
So
I
where
don't
does the loony
I'm going to
part?
have to hand in my loony card.
Is that just our label? And is it time to actually look at changing the labels in order to change the way we engage with it?
We need to stop labelling, I suppose, things full stop. Maybe there's a difference between identifying
So even me
things.
saying actors are mental is a terrible thing to say.
No, because you don't know any better.
How did you get to be a big flash Professor Fino type?
Well, I'm not a big fan. Well, you just get a lanyard, put a fake ID, and you're away.
You're talking down your thing. See, I feel like, you know, I mean, it's one thing for an actor to, or even a comedian to stand on stage and talk about their neuroses and their crazy parents and make people laugh, but it's another thing when it's actually you sharing your absolute, authentic truth about what you experience.
When you speak it out loud, it makes it a fact that you now have to deal with it, and that's the frightening bit. What if I can't? We always underestimate, we constantly underestimate our ability to cope. That's what it is to live. Every day we cope. And as human beings, we're brilliant with language. We're brilliant communicators. That's why we're the #1 species in the world.
I feel like I was meant to, at this point in my life, sit in this car with you and have this chat. I feel like I should be paying you for a consultation. Wow, Deb, here we are at your workplace.
We are, yeah.
Thank you so much. It was one of the most extraordinary conversations I've been privileged to have, and it's been an absolute pleasure driving you.
Thank you. The privilege is all mine, you know. And it brings to mind, you know, the 3 best words in the English language.
What's that?
You're not alone.
Thank you. It was one of the most interesting rides I've ever taken with someone. What Debs was saying was just so interesting and what I've never heard before. That's useful knowledge.
When you get old, you get respectable.
Oh, yeah.
So embarrassing.
It hasn't happened to me yet.
And while I believe in celebrating diversity and rejoicing and all that, it's the things that we have in common that bring us together. Then we can celebrate our differences, I think, because that just gives us that collected sort of oneness as well. So it was brilliant. Yeah. Thanks.
Give that child a hug from me.
I shall.
All right. Thanks, Deb.
See
ya.